Karibuni, and my name is Michelle Koinange. I'm the coordinator of Stop the Traffic Kenya. I'll be supporting Monica behind the scenes. So Monica will be your moderator, and she'll now take lead from this moment. Karibuni nyinyi. Welcome to all of you.
My name is Monica Chamazima. I head the legal program at Willow International, which is a non-profit organization focused on eradicating human trafficking in Uganda through government reform, global partnerships, and survivor care. Willow is an active member of the National Task Force on Prevention of Human Trafficking in Persons and the Coalition Against Trafficking in Persons, Uganda. This conference has been put together through a collaboration with the Coalition Against Trafficking in Persons, Uganda, and Stop the Traffic Kenya, which are both coalition bodies made up of civil society organizations who share the goal of ending human trafficking in our respective countries. Uganda and Kenya are both source, destination, and transit routes for victims of human trafficking, both in the domestic and transnational spheres. So the agriculture, extractive, and domestic service subsectors are known contributors to this high prevalence, with children and women being among the most affected persons due to their increased vulnerability. This doesn't mean that men are not affected, but the statistics of children are the biggest percentage of victims affected by this vice. Uganda and Kenya are also known to have a large population of migrant workers in the Gulf Cooperation countries who have been linked with reports of suspected human trafficking and labor exploitation, and the situation gets worse every day. Having developed or made commitments to various policy frameworks, including the Palermo Protocol, Sustainable Development Goal 8.7, our domestic trafficking legislations, and other legal frameworks, the governments of Uganda and Kenya have taken some positive steps to combat trafficking in persons through collaborative efforts of the different stakeholders. However, gaps continue to exist in combating this vice. As we commemorate the World Day Against Trafficking in Persons under the theme Committed to the Cause, working on the front lines to end human trafficking, actors in Uganda and Kenya have for an entire month of July been reflecting on the strides made, the challenges, particularly those posed by COVID-19, in combating and rethinking strategies for the future under the 4 Ps. Those are the basic elements under which we do our work. That is prevention, protection, prosecution, and partnership. So this week, as you heard from the previous events, from the previous engagement, we are focusing on prosecution, both at a national and a regional level. And this conference has been convened under the theme that we have been discussing in the previous panel.
In the panel.
Jenny, we can hear you. Jenny, we can hear you.
We're able to move there, and then so that we can move in one of the panels, in one of the plenary. So by clicking sessions and joining the one that you want to join.
Jennifer, we can hear you.
Okay, let me.
Can you hear me now?
Should I go? Okay, thank you. This breakout session is going to focus or delve deeper and expand on the ideas around cross-border cooperation in investigating and prosecuting trafficking in person cases. We know the East Africa Legislative Assembly is currently considering a bill on trafficking, on counter-trafficking, and if passed into law, we believe will afford us as a region great strides in the fight against trafficking in persons. So I would like to thank our panel so much for making the time to be with us. And I'm going to take this opportunity to introduce everybody. We have one member of this panel who is yet to join us, but I'll go ahead and introduce him as well, and he'll catch up with us. Oh, here he is. David, you're welcome. So I will begin with, hello, David.
Hi, Monica.
So I'm going to begin with the two panelists who were on the previous panel. On the just concluded panel, we have Rachel Biholi, who is a seasoned advocate of the High Court. She has over 14 years experience in prosecuting cases in Uganda and currently serves as the Assistant Director of Public Prosecution. She heads the Anti-Trafficking in Persons Department of the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions and is also the Deputy Head of the International Crimes Department of the same entity. She's passionate about justice and victims' rights as they pursue their cases. Our second panelist,
Thank you, Monica.
lawyer. Welcome, Rachel. Our second panelist, who on the screen is just below me, is Evelyn Olonga, who is also an advocate of the High Court in Kenya with over 11 years of practice experience. She's currently working for the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions in the position of Principal Prosecution Counsel. She's a member of FIDA Kenya and a trainer of trainers in sexual and gender sexual offences and human trafficking cases. Evelyn has also participated as an expert in counter-trafficking on several platforms where she has shared her views and her expertise. Some of these platforms are the International Visitors Leadership Program, European African Association of Prosecutions on Human Trafficking and Smuggling of Migrants in Egypt, East African Association of Prosecutors, among others. Last but not least, Evelyn is a champion of protection of human rights. Evelyn, we are so glad to have you on this panel. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
Next up, we have David. David Mourinho Gitao is a detective constable who has been with the Directorate of Criminal Investigations for the last 5 years. He has served as a General Investigations Officer before he moved to the Anti-Trafficking and Child Protection Unit in 2019, where he has specialized in conducting investigations involving trafficking, sexual abuse, and exploitation of children. General Gitao is part of the teams investigating child abduction, child pornography, victimization of children, physical and sexual assaults of children, and any other form of child exploitation and abuse. He has participated in safeguarding over 100 children at risk of abuse and exploitation. Detective Gitao has presented both locally and regionally on the issue of child trafficking with regards to investigative and interventions and techniques for law enforcement in Kenya, Uganda, Somalia, and Ethiopia. We're so glad to have you on this panel, David. Thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you.
So we're going to structure this session in such a way that will afford every panelist 10 minutes to speak towards a topic that I will highlight for them. And then after that, if we have questions, we can pose them, and Michelle and I will try and make sure that everyone's questions are answered. So we're just going to dive right in, and I'm going to begin with David. David, could you please talk to us about the current measures in place between Uganda and Kenya for working together on whether they are there on joint trafficking in persons cases, and what level of collaboration is there?
So, thank you, Monica, and thank you for having me in this panel. So, I'll be the steps that we've taken as as the two countries, I think within the East African region, we have the best and most appealing collaborations between law enforcement authorities. So we work closely with the Ugandan counterparts in dealing with the child trafficking, cross-border child trafficking from Uganda and also from Kenya. This is mostly through the national central bureaus, the Interpol national central bureaus, which my able colleague has also mentioned about in the previous panel. So the cooperation has been there, and it's been great because we've been able, as law enforcement, to seamlessly conduct investigations in Uganda. Facilitation has been quite good for us as police officers to undertake our investigations there. Similarly, collaboration with our Ugandan counterparts coming into Kenya and participating in operations that we've conducted to rescue vulnerable children who are at risk of being trafficked or who have already been trafficked and are also in exploitative situations. The other significant collaboration that has been happening has been through law enforcement and civil society organizations. So in some of the cases where we have a problem in getting shelters for the big numbers of victims who've been rescued, most civil society organizations have chipped in and actually assisted our units in providing the same. So that collaboration has been there, and part of this has also been on awareness and training. So a number of forums actually organized by East African Child Rights Network, bringing together law enforcement in both countries, in Kenya and Uganda, to discuss and talk about the trends and the issues on human trafficking within across the two countries. Sorry, I can't hear you.
Sorry, my question, a follow-up question is, and does it extend towards aspects like evidence, collecting evidence on behalf of your counterparts who may be, for instance, the lead investigator on a matter? Is it easy to look towards this collaboration to gather evidence that is outside, say, the jurisdiction that is prosecuting or investigating a matter? For example, if I wanted to get a statement from Kenyan nationals living in Kenya, would this collaboration make this happen for an investigating officer, say, in Uganda or Rwanda?
Actually, yes. And when I say that we are able to conduct investigations in Uganda, it means that we can travel to Uganda, join our colleagues or counterparts from the Ugandan Police Service, and be able to pinpoint areas of interest or people who we need to interview, who we need to talk to. We are facilitated throughout all that process. If we require any documents, we can apply through our counterparts in Uganda. And even if it's suspects or victims that we need to record statements from, that is also facilitated by through this kind of collaboration I'm talking about.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to move on to Madam Rachel Biholi. Rachel, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. My question for you is the fight against trafficking in persons helped, the prosecution of trafficking in persons cases helped by regional cooperation, and what are the benefits of working together across jurisdictions on these TIP cases? Rachel? Okay, we seem to have maybe lost her temporarily.
Hello?
Okay. Yes, you can hear now.
Yes, Monica.
Should I repeat the question?
Please, thank you.
So my question for you is, how beneficial is regional cooperation towards prosecuting trafficking in persons cases, or is it more beneficial than it is a bureaucratic hindrance, or is it something that you would easily do away with?
Thank you, Monica. Thank you all for this opportunity once again. I'm glad to be part of this session, breakaway as well. To answer your question, Monica, you've said you're asking whether regional cooperation is beneficial to us. I should say, I must say yes. We enjoy regional cooperation most, especially with Kenya and Rwanda and Tanzania, and it has been very beneficial, especially when it comes to investigating cases of trafficking in persons, because through this regional cooperation, the cases that are identified are easily fast-tracked. So before Uganda gets to know that a victim of trafficking has probably gone unnoticed across the border, our counterparts in Kenya may intercept that victim and, immediately call us, alert us, so that victim can easily be rescued. So, so besides the fast tracking of cases, we have had various bilateral meetings with Kenya to strengthen our border controls. We've held these meetings in Busia, in Ruahaha borders, and everything. So, and as a result of these meetings, we realized that the victims of trafficking are being treated as victims across, both in Uganda and also in Kenya. Privy to these bilateral meetings, we had several incidents or cases where victims of trafficking were actually arrested and prosecuted for cases of maybe illegal entry, working without permits. But because of this, we see that we have ensured victim protection against any kind of prosecution, no matter what situation they've been caught in. So I think this is very great, and I believe that the regional cooperation should really continue to get to another extent, and not only stop at Kenya, but also to the other East African countries. And then we have also shared best practices out as a result of this regional cooperation. We are just yet to launch the national referral mechanism in Uganda, but Kenya already have their NRM. So when we have these joint meetings with them and joint trainings with them, we learn a lot from them that we can also bring back home as a best practice, you understand? And this has also helped us as a country in also upping our game in combating human trafficking, in improving our investigations, and also prosecutions. Like I earlier mentioned in the first session, we have benefited a lot from the platform for East African prosecutors. Well, this platform cuts down a lot of bureaucracy. So in case of any need of investigations, need of evidence, need of any clarity, whatever information we need, we easily get it. And this makes our work more efficient and effective in prosecuting these cases. especially cases of trafficking, we realize that once the victims have been rehabilitated, then there's need for the court process to be very fast, run very fast, you know, to avoid all the dangers of a day trial in a case. So I think, and also, I'll also talk about the resources. We find that the resources are well utilized when there's regional cooperation. So before an investigator in Uganda moves to the neighboring country, they already have a guide on what they're going to do, on what piece of evidence. There's a starting point. So it makes investigations a lot faster and cheaper because you have someone who is out to help you. So I do encourage us to continue with this regional cooperation, and yes, it's been very beneficial to both countries, especially in Uganda. But also we believe that this cooperation can also extend to the other East African countries. I seem not to be hearing you. Monica, I'm not hearing you.
You know?
Yes,
Hello?
now.
Yes.
Yes.
So moving over to you, Rachel. No, sorry, Evelyn. What are the challenges that you encounter in trying to collaborate on prosecution of TIP cases? And what interventions do you think need to be put in place to address these challenges?
Thank you, Monica, for the opportunity. There are quite a number of challenges that we face in prosecuting these cases. First, we'd like to appreciate that different regimes pose a challenge when it comes to cooperation. Mutual legal assistance is one of the tools that we use in international cooperation, but sometimes it takes unduly long to process, to have the witnesses brought back home or to extradite the offenders. So the challenges are that our laws are not harmonized. Our laws are not harmonized. And again, the informal method used as to prosecutor and prosecutor sometimes may not yield much fruit, because sometimes people sent to attend these workshops are not at the managerial level. So they also need to escalate it to another level in order for the communication to reach home. So that one also poses a delay. Secondly, in dealing with these cases, you find that there is no obligation, no state has obligation. The obligation is not mandatory. So it depends on the attitude of the requesting and the state that is being requested on how fast they will work on the report. I may say that our relationship with Uganda and Tanzania has been a little bit easy because of these informal methods, but still there are quite stumbling blocks when it comes to reaching the managerial level. Again, you find that these cases begins at the investigation stage. So before these matters reach the prosecution level, our prosecutors will go through this, our investigators will go through these hurdles unless we partner as a team through conducting investigation-led investigations. That will give us an opportunity to identify challenges and approach the relevant authority in other jurisdictions for quick response. Again, Kenya and Tanzania, there is a border at, Kenya and Uganda. We have porous borders. Sometimes when witnesses leave Kenya or they leave Uganda or Tanzania, they are not likely to be found because they can enter the country through porous borders. Again, we cannot wish away corruption. This is a major challenge. One would wonder, how did a perpetrator pass through the borders where it is being manned by immigration officers, border management officers? So we cannot also wish away corruption as a challenge. Again, shelter houses where we have to keep these victims. You find that in Kenya, we rely on the shelters by the NGOs. So if we can't have our own, then having these victims kept in a decent place where they deserve is also a challenge. Language barrier is another problem that we face. You find that prosecution or investigation cannot be well concluded or thoroughly done because of language barrier. Sometimes when you investigate and the law requires that you present an accused person within 24 hours, you may not be able to get an interpreter to enable you record statement from this witness. So that is a challenge that we face. Another challenge that we face as prosecution is interference of the witnesses. This can be by the perpetrators who are from another region and they have people living in Kenya. And so the witness is intimidated through an agent or an association. So you'll find that in such cases, a witness will not be able to cooperate with the law enforcement or the prosecution. I thank you for that time, and I would like to end there.
Thank you, Evelyn. One of the things that you've mentioned that it's for me is the prosecution-led investigations. How widely done is that in Kenya? How widely done is that in Kenya? Because I understand. Give Rachel a chance as well to talk to our prosecution-led investigator. Is that already in practice in Kenya, the prosecution-led investigation?
Yes, that is already in practice in Kenya. It is governed by the ODPP Act. It was adopted in the Act, and we have done quite a number of cases where the convictions have been 100%. Prosecution-guided investigations are done in two ways. The investigating officer may request the DPP to allow a team, to form a team of prosecutors in partnership with investigators to go to the scene of crime and investigate the case. Our role per se is not to investigate, but it's to guide. We are not carrying out any investigation, even though we are at the scene. Ours is to inform the investigators to fill in the gaps. We do not take their role for investigation. Secondly, the investigating officer may come to the office with a file. After compiling a file, they forward the file to the DPP with a recommendation of a charge. And it is at that point that upon studying the file, we maybe give them areas to cover in case they were not covered in order to fill in these gaps. This is encouraged and this is one of the main progress of the Office of the DPP, which has really worked well, not only in the cases of human trafficking, but also other cases. I personally have participated in a number of prosecution-guided investigations, and I must confess that conviction was successful. Thank you.
Thank you. Rachel, would you like to talk to us? I think I'll let all three of you talk to us about your experience with prosecution-led investigations.
Okay.
We'll start with Rachel, then David will.
Okay. Thank you, Monica. Uganda as well has embraced prosecution-led investigations. And, all trafficking cases now that are registered, most of them, I think 90% of cases are investigated under prosecution-guided investigations. So prosecution-led investigations, they ensure that the investigations are thorough from the onset. So what happens is when police registers a trafficking case, they bring it to the attention of the DPP. And then we get a team of prosecutors to join police in the investigations. So the reason why the prosecution is brought on board at the earliest is such that we can guide police on ensuring that we collect evidence that is admissible in court, and we ensure that we maintain the integrity of that evidence. So in most cases, sometimes when we're not having prosecution-guided evidence, you may have good evidence, but the manner in which it has been collected, probably court orders were not obtained, no search warrants. You find that you have good evidence, but you cannot use it in court. So we find that the benefit of coming on board on the investigation board early is that to ensure that the evidence you have is really, well, is admissible, is the kind of evidence that is admissible in court. And then also, we also ensure that evidence is also well preserved. The chain of custody is also maintained. You understand? Because we are looking at using this piece of evidence in court. And then two, when it comes to victims, sometimes we guide police on the necessary referrals. So when you're conducting prosecution-led investigations, you may find that the immediate need of the victim at that time may not be to have a case prosecuted. They may have other urgent needs like medical, psychosocial support, shelter, education. So we try to guide police on first attending to those immediate needs, and where possible, we guide on necessary referrals, because we believe that when we have a well-rehabilitated witness, then that's a better witness for our case. And then we also realize that sometimes when a case has just been reported to police and victims are interviewed, they use giving statements. So it's as a result of that we come on board and guide police. So if the victims are not ready to make statements, we give them time, you know, and then we also guide on how the suspect is going to be handled.
We have lost two of our members. Michelle, am I clear?
Everyone is still on.
Okay.
I still see all your panelists.
All right. So
wait, I'll get David back though. He's just left.
Okay, thank you.
So just from the onset, I was still talking about
David. I would like to hear from you on prosecution-led investigation. This is an initiative for law enforcement.
Monica, please repeat what you're saying. We can't hear you. You're breaking up.
I'd like to hear from David about his view on prosecution-led investigations. and how that is perceived by law enforcement, whether it is beneficial or whether it enhances the quality
thank you, Monica.
of the investigations.
So, one is to state that we've had a good working relationship with the Directorate of Public Prosecutions, and in trafficking cases, this partnership is very beneficial. Hello? Yes, this partnership has.
Yes, we can hear it.
The partnership with the. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
I can hear you.
I can hear you both.
Michelle?
Yeah, I've been stating that the partnership has been quite beneficial, and working closely with Evelyn on various matters, and in the course of our investigations, we seek advice. We sometimes, where we think the investigations are not complete or they're not enough, we do not have enough evidence, we will compile files and forward these files to them for them to give an advisory opinion on gaps or areas that they think we should cover, so that we have a compact enough evidence to sustain successful prosecution. So my opinion and view about prosecution-led investigations is that they're quite beneficial, because at the end of the day, it's through this close working relationship between the two agencies that we're going to have successful cases and get enough convictions in our cases as police officers. So yes, it's a plus, especially in cases of human trafficking, which sometimes investigations might take quite long or may involve a lot of different aspects, like very traumatized victims or other complexities that includes other forms of organized crime.
Okay. Thank you, David. Speaking of organized crime, that leads me to one of the, I think, peculiar aspects of our trafficking, anti-trafficking law here in Uganda, and I think we have a similar situation in Kenya. Restitution for victims of trafficking is one of the issues that is highlighted in the National Prevention of Trafficking during investigations and prosecution, and this goes to all three of you. Do we ever think about if, for example, the end result of restitution and how that can be secured, because of the nature of the crime, many times perpetrators have assets across jurisdictions, and what role would a prosecutor or an investigator play in identifying the means through which restitution can be realized at the end of a successful trafficking case? I think we can start with you, Evelyn.
Thank you, Monica. If I got you right, you are talking about restitution. Thank you very much again.
Yes.
Basically, restitution is meant to maintain status quo, to return the victim to the position and the status that he was before he got harm or injury or loss of property. I would say restitution will start from when a victim is rescued. A victim may be put in detention either by the trafficker or the state or any other entity. And these are the cases where we see victims being charged for being in Kenya illegally, or a victim who has committed a crime in the process. So restitution, first of all, will start by removing this person, this victim, from the detention. That is one step of restitution. Secondly, we have to recognize legal identity and citizenship of this victim. This is key. Using the tools for identification that the police ought to use as their tools, they should establish the identity and citizenship of this victim. They should also ensure, because not all witnesses are victims, the fact that a victim or a witness is not going to testify in court does not make him less of a victim of trafficking. So we should ensure that there is safe repatriation to his country of residence. That is key. Again, there are some challenges or harm caused to the person, the victim, and they may require medical attention, psychosocial support. All this should help them to be back to what they were before. Again, by getting legal representation other than the prosecutor. In Kenya, we have Legal Aid Act, where a victim of an offense is entitled to legal representation, and they air their voice through the Victim Protection Act. The right also extends to the accused person. They are also offered legal representation at the state's expense. So these are things that should be done to victims to restore them. And talking of restoration, we cannot omit to say compensation as one of reparation ways of bringing back the victim to its position. We have, when a case is concluded in court, the prosecutor may apply under the Criminal Procedure Code to the magistrate to award damages. And we have one of the recent cases, though it is a case of sexual offenses. A police officer was accused of raping a lady in Lamu, and he was sentenced to life imprisonment. And apart from that, the court awarded damages that he should pay 400,000 to the victim for the injuries caused. So this is an authority that will encourage more prosecutors to apply for compensation, apply so that victims are awarded damages in terms of money. Secondly, victims under the Victims Protection Act, they have a right to apply for compensation. And the advocates are representing the victim also through civil courts may also apply for this compensation. And again, if the accused person has property, they can make an application in the civil court such that this property is attached and sold, and a money decree is issued and money given to the victim. Therefore, measures to realize this restitution or compensation or rehabilitation of the victims. As the state, we should ensure that protection against interference with the victim's privacy is observed. Secondly, issues of confidentiality. We protect victims from media reports, exposing them, because this can make them re-victimized. Should they leave, maybe after adjudication of the case, and they go back home, By exposing them, it may encourage other perpetrators to approach them and they get re-victimized. Lastly, we also advocate for provision of proper assistance of victims seeking justice. We should ensure that the victim is informed of the remedies. The victim is well informed at all stages of the case, from the investigation level to the court, to the trial level. I hope I answered your question, Monica.
Evelyn, you have raised an and ask. Rachel doesn't seem to be on. Is Rachel on?
I'm not able to hear you.
Rachel is still on. She's on, but she could be away from her machine because she's muted and her video is off. But she's still online.
Videos off. Okay.
I'm back.
So I'm going to go to David, and then we'll get back to Rachel later. David, we've talked a lot about collaboration between Kenya and Uganda on investigations and also prosecutions. But are there other countries in the region? You have worked with Ethiopia and Somalia, so I think you will probably be best placed to tell us about cooperation with other countries in the region and how that looks.
Yes, we've worked closely with Tanzania, closely with Burundi, and particular on cases of trafficking for forced begging from Tanzania into Kenya. So that is the most rampant kind of trafficking that's occurring between the two countries. So similar collaboration with law enforcement in Tanzania, and we are able to work with the two countries. We did across the two countries. Our investigators from the units, from this unit, have been able to conduct investigations in Tanzania, access to families, documents, local administrations to clarify on things that they would use as material facts for their cases in court. Yes, so that has been happening. Other countries, Burundi, because we have a lot of Burundian nationals who've been rescued in the country, and that collaboration has also been there. Apart from that is that we also work with Ethiopian police because of the migrants who are being moved through Kenya into the southern corridor. And though we have just a few cases since the inception of the unit, that collaboration has moved forward to networking sessions where we have Ethiopian police coming into a unit, and we've created that network. So whenever cases arise in the future, we already know that we have contacts in Ethiopia before we get to the formal channels of communicating through the countries or through the national central bureaus for Interpol. Yes.
Okay, thank you, David. So while we still have you on, maybe you could talk to us as well about the obstacles that law enforcement faces in this collaborative work in investigating. What obstacles do you face? What challenges do you face, and what kind of interventions would you propose to have these challenges addressed?
Particularly something that my able colleague, Madam Weni, mentioned earlier about repatriation of victims. So generally one of the problem is that victims are repatriated back as soon as they probably testify, or because we do not have enough shelters in the country, victims are being repatriated back and probably to testify in the future. So if these victims are not available, that means your cases are on shaky grounds. The other challenge is the language barrier. It's a big challenge. So for instance, in the case with the Karamoja girls, whom we interviewed at this unit, seeking somebody who speaks their language can quite be a daunting task and a problem. And being able to being able to get the proper information that we need to support our investigations. So that's another challenge. So we have to seek. So in this case of the Karamoja, and when we went to Kampala, our luckiest bit is that one of the police officers spoke their language, and through this we were able to get more information that probably we didn't get when we were interviewing these girls in Nairobi. So those are some of the challenges. But then also sometimes the formal processes to request for information and rights to our counterparts in the other countries. So the formal channels may sometimes take long, and considering the nature of trafficking cases, this becomes another challenge. The other thing that I mentioned earlier about the supporting victims is that in both countries the problem is still the same: the lack of shelters, and so they're having to rely on private or civil society organizations to provide these shelters is a challenge for our collaborations, because when we repatriate a big number of girls back to those countries and they can't travel directly to their places of origin, probably like in the case of the Karamoja, they couldn't travel directly to their place of origin in the north, in the northern part of Uganda. Then means the government in Uganda has to look for a shelter to keep these girls and accommodate them for some times before they make those arrangements. So they also, the practice then is that they also have to rely on those civil society organizations. So that's an area probably the two governments can look at in increasing the available protective services and shelters for victims.
Thank you, David. So we cannot really wind up this panel without talking about COVID and its effects on the work that we've been doing during this time. So I would like to pose a question to Rachel on what kind of cases of have, I mean, we have received reports that trafficking has spiked during this COVID period, and I'd like you to talk to us about that and what type of cases you've been seeing coming through your desk during this COVID, and how this period has affected the work that prosecution.
Thank you, Monica. COVID has. Yes, Monica. Am I?
Rachel?
Am I being heard now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Monica. COVID-19 has definitely had its own impact on trafficking. I'll look at both the negative and probably the positive. Well, for the positive, I would say that since we all know that borders in Uganda have been closed, and the airport too, probably sometime back, Kenya was also faced the same. And as a result of closing the borders, we have registered a decrease in the cases of transnational trafficking that have been reported. There's been a decrease in the cases of our girls, women, boys being trafficked across the borders, which is, I think, kind of a positive. However, the same restrictions on the borders and the airport closures have had a negative impact on the movement of victims. So we find that victims are now stuck. We find that victims are now stuck with their traffickers because they cannot move during this COVID period. So, and the reporting mechanism is also a challenge. Someone has to move from one place to another, probably to report that they're being trafficked or they're in a situation of trafficking. So, and this is a very big challenge in that the victims, rescue of the victims is slow. And as their rescue is slow, that means they continue to suffer more exploitation. Within the country, during the COVID period, we have registered an increase in the number of domestic cases reported. They have actually skyrocketed. So this has, at a certain point, made us believe that we have been only concentrating on transnational trafficking and actually not giving much attention to the domestic cases, because we have seen that since the push and pull factors have remained constant. For instance, COVID has brought about a lot of unemployment, people who are working in salons, border riders, arcades. The poverty levels have gone high, demand for cheap labor, because all these, push and pull factors. COVID has brought about a nice breeding ground for these archaic traditional practices that encourage child marriages. We have seen that we've registered more cases pertaining to parents selling their children for survival. We've seen such cases in Katwe, in Kira, parents selling their biological children for survival during this COVID pandemic. So there has been really an increase in the cases of domestic trafficking reported. We've seen cases of sexual exploitation. Child marriages are under increase because children are not in school. Schools are closed. Children at home. Parents are now forced to, send them into marriages for their survival. I mean, for parents to get something small for their survival and also for the children. We've seen an increase in forced prostitution. Child sacrifice and kidnap has actually also increased during this period, pandemic period. So and forced labor, including forced servitude. So these are the cases we have really registered during this pandemic. I mean, we have also been having a challenge of transport within, but what did we do as ODPP? As ODPP, we created a platform that brings together prosecutors and investigators that are specialized in trafficking cases. So we have been using social media various platforms to get information about any trafficking incident. And once it's reported on the platform, we quickly form a team of investigators and prosecutors to handle the case, handle the matter, to investigate the case and handle the matter. Actually, most of these cases I'm referring to have actually been are in court. We investigated them successfully. The prosecution-led investigations conducted, and they are now in court for facing prosecution. And we have also seen that the victims have been rescued. We have rescued several victims, and some of them are with various civil society organizations that are taking care of them. And we have also seen the parents who have been complicit in these offenses have also been prosecuted. But of course, when we prosecute parents, we are also foreseeing an issue of plea bargain that may come up ahead for us to handle these. I mean, some parents are willing to plea bargain and testify against the trafficker. So it's also an avenue that we are going to use to fast track cases and the like. So that's briefly what I can say about the impact of COVID and the cases we have registered during this period. But I might say that the platform has been really, really helpful, because this is a platform that brings together all prosecutors and investigators in the whole country. So all cases, we have seen cases in Kabale, we've registered cases in Soroti. So we find that throughout the whole country, we have been kept abreast with what is taking place and what is happening. And we have swiftly come in to, rescue the victims, handle the investigations, and most of them are being prosecuted. So that is what I can talk about impact of that.
Okay. Thank you so much, Rachel, for that insightful commentary. We are actually about to have this breakout session closed. So I'm going to ask our panelists to just say a few words in closing, and then we'll see where that leads us. Okay, so I think we're going to start with Evelyn. We have about 2 minutes each, and then I'll wrap up, and we shall move on to the next session. So let's start with Evelyn to say something in closing.
Thank you very much again, Monica. I must appreciate that this platform has been very educative and enlightening. I would like to say that despite the many challenges we are facing, both prosecution and investigation have really made tremendous step in the fight against human trafficking. And just to be specific, they mentioned specialized trainings given to both the police and the prosecutors, which are also encouraged for the judiciary, which are the final arbiters in these cases. I would really emphasize on strengthening cooperation amongst the states in the East Africa. The world has become